Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my new podcast called Dance Journey. This is episode 2. I have a new microphone, so we're going to see how this works. I'm just holding it because I feel like the sound quality is better that way. You're supposed to put it on your shirt, but I'm not wearing like the right shirt for it. It's kind of like flimsy. So we're just doing it this way for today. We're going to see how it works. This is an adventure. This podcast journey is its own journey. But, anyways, Dance Journey, my new podcast, what it's about is I love dance. I love taking dance classes in LA. I want to share more about how I got into dance, why, like what I've done with dance in the past, and what got me more into it these days. And then I also want to interview dancers, interview you. You're probably a dancer. And anyone who wants to be interviewed to share more about their dance journey and what they've done with dance in the past, how they got into it, what they're doing with it now. But right now, we are in the part of the series where I'm talking about my dance journey and something I forgot to share. So I kind of talked about my childhood experience, my high school experience, and my college experience in the Chicago area because that's where I grew up. I talked about that in the first episode, but I actually forgot to mention kind of significantly that it was kind of significant that in high school, during that period of time called winterim, which I mentioned to you guys, that was the period of time in between semesters where we could do like a little internship or take classes that were of our interest. One of the years for winterim, I went to Florida and did that film internship, like I had told you about. But another year, it was actually, I think it was my senior year of high school. I actually did a class called choreography, where we actually learned how to create choreography and teach choreography. So I just wanted to say that I absolutely loved that class in high school. I signed up for that. Like, yes, I'm so excited that they have this class. And I just remember us like watching a lot of musicals and studying dances so that we could come up with ideas for our own choreography. So we kind of pulled ideas from other people's choreography, not like stealing it, but just like being inspired by it or trying to think of moves. And I remember creating like a whole piece of choreography to a song. I don't remember the song, but I remember there was definitely like floor work and I put all these interesting moves cuz like I wasn't taking dance regularly. So it was like almost like I was more free to just make up any type of move because I didn't really have the experience to know what was good technique or anything. I just was like, "Oh, I want to make up a dance to a song." So, I remember making up a dance to this song and it was one of the weeks where we were, or one of the days where we were like performing it or showing the class or something. And we weren't in the room that day. We were in this like area called the atrium where a lot of people a lot of people at my high school would like pass through that area. And I remember we had a new director that senior year of like dance and the musicals and all of that stuff, and she was very talented. And I remember her like passing by as I was performing my piece, and I remember her kind of stopping and like watching it. And I felt really proud of it. And I don't know what she thought. I don't remember her saying anything, but she definitely stopped and like watched the whole thing and seemed like interested. And I remember being like, I bet she thinks this is good. I have no idea. It might have been terrible. But, anyways, I really loved that class and I forgot to mention that. So, I did take a choreography class in high school, wanted to mention that. But the part that we left off at in the first episode was it was the end of college. And I was getting my degree in marketing. I was graduating a semester early. And I told my roommate that I just didn't want to get uh, I'm distracted because I forgot I wanted to talk about the class I just came from and the class that I'm going to. I was like, I want to start every episode talking about the class I just took and the class I'm going to. And I forgot to do that. But I just can't keep starting this over because I have to just push past my nerves and just like get this done. So, just so you know, I took ballet this morning. It's Saturday. It's my day of lots of classes. And I'm actually only taking 2 classes today because I have a teacher that's out of town. But I took ballet this morning with Chasen in Santa Monica, which I love. And then I'm going to take Nico O'Connor's jazz funk class in a little bit, but I'm doing this podcast in between. Okay, we'll just pretend that was like a commercial break since I don't have commercials yet. Okay, so what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So we were ending my college experience. I was getting my degree in marketing. Didn't realize I didn't really want to do anything in marketing because some internships I had that I didn't like that much. And my roommate had said, "Well, what do you want to do, Tracy?" And I said, "Well, I just want to move to Hollywood and be an actress." But I kind of said that on a whim. It wasn't like I was really thinking about doing that. That was just like the thing that came off the top of my head. And she was like, "You should just do that or whatever." And I was like, "Ha ha ha, nobody just does that." Okay, so cut back to real life. I didn't start thinking about how I can move to LA to do acting after that conversation. It was just like a funny conversation now thinking about it because I did end up doing that eventually. But when I was graduating college, I was still just looking for a regular job. I was not trying to do anything crazy. I just wanted like a regular job. I just didn't think I wanted to do marketing. And something that I did right before I graduated, so the summer before my senior year of college, I had a marketing internship at a children's camp. And I ended up being a counselor for the teenagers for 2 weeks because they were short counselors. And even though my job was actually really crazy there and I didn't have a lot of free time, I was like, can I please be a counselor for the teenagers since they need an extra one? I just like really want to do that because I didn't love my actual job. And the director of the camp was like, well, if you can get all of your work done and do it on all your breaks, and then you wanted to do the counselor thing as well, you can. So I did that there, and I just like absolutely loved working with the teenagers. I thought it was so fun, and it just gave me so much energy. Um, and I was able to like do my regular job during all my breaks. And I remember when I had my exit interview from the camp, the director who worked with me the most, he just like, I remember he was sitting down with me outside and just we're talking about my experience. And he was like, you know, Tracy, you did a really great job at being the marketing intern. Like, never had any, like, I always could trust you with everything. You did everything well. He's like, but when you worked with the teenagers, you just like lit up. You were like a different person. You had so much energy and you were so good at it and you loved it so much. And so he just like wanted to encourage me that God might be leading me a different direction and to like take that if that was the case. So that was really interesting. And then when I was back at school that last semester, there was an organization from California, from San Jose, California, which I didn't know where anything was in California. I had no idea that San Jose was like Northern California. Like, I didn't know the difference between LA and Long Beach and San Jose. I didn't know anything. But basically, there was an organization from San Jose, California that came to our school, came to a bunch of schools in the Midwest, recruiting counselors for a teen drug recovery home. And for some reason, they didn't care what our degree was in as long as we had a degree. And so I was like, oh, this is perfect. Working with teenagers. They don't care that my degree's in marketing. They basically said that they would like train us in whatever we need to know for that job. I mean, I was a little leery of the fact that it was like a drug recovery home because I was like, okay, I like working with teenagers, but I was kind of scared. Like, I've never done drugs and these teenagers are not going to relate to me. Because I'm not like gangster. I didn't do drugs. And they are going to think I am so like nerdy or whatever. That's what I was like most afraid of, which is so funny to me now. But I did apply for that job and I ended up getting it and moving all the way to San Jose, California. And I had never been to California. I also wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to California to pursue acting or dance or anything performance wise. Like, really, I had made that comment to my roommate about wanting to be an actress, but it was something I used to want when I was little. I wasn't taking it seriously, and that was like not why I wanted to go to California. I don't know, when you're not from California and you've never been there, especially when you're from the Midwest, I think you're just like, California, great weather and like it's beautiful there. You imagine it to be this like dreamland. So it just sounds amazing whether you're going to do acting or something else. So I really wasn't thinking I was going there to eventually do acting. I was just like, okay, this is the job that opened up for me. I just don't want to do marketing. And this is a job that opened up for me working with teenagers. And it just happens to be in California. It's so crazy. So I moved all the way to San Jose. I remember driving across the country with my friend Alyssa, who was nice enough to like drive with me. And then she like flew back home. I didn't know anybody in California. And I remember we were driving, for 3 days or whatever, staying overnight places, but we drove for a few days. And I remember us coming into San Jose and it was just like a really nice time of year and everything was really green and there were these hills and it was just like so beautiful. And I remember Alyssa just being like, Tracy, I can't believe you're gonna live here. And I'm like, me either. Like, this is like so amazing. So she basically drops me off and leaves. It was such a weird feeling to be like, I don't know anyone here. And I'm working at this teen drug like group home. And I also don't know anyone there. And I live there. You live there with like 6 of these teenagers. There's another counselor too, and you switch off shifts and stuff. But wow, that was just a crazy experience. Actually, I loved the girls that I worked with, the teenagers. The thing I was most afraid of was actually like nothing to be afraid of. Like, I connected with them so well. They really liked me. one of the people in charge at the organization was like, "You're the best counselor we ever had," which, like, they shouldn't have said that when I was not even there that long, because anyone can be great in the beginning. I might not have stayed great if I was there for a long time, but the story is I did not stay there a long time. I stayed there for a few months and then I quit because even though I actually loved the job, I loved working with the teenagers, it was just like very short staffed and there was a lot of ways the organization was being run that I didn't particularly agree with. Like the teenage girls would complain about different things, different ways the organization did things, and I found myself like in my heart like agreeing with the girls versus agreeing with the company. And over time I was just like I'm feeling really weird. Like I don't think I like support all the ways this organization works. Like some of it was okay, but there was just a lot of disorganization and I felt like it didn't feel as safe to me as it should have been, and people were getting really overworked. I was developing these like panic attacks in the middle of the night, and it wasn't like I was afraid of the girls or anything. It was just like it was just a disorganized situation, and I was very burnt out, and a lot of people were, and it was just like the environment just was so crazy to me. And I remember just like going to church like every other weekend because I worked every other weekend, and just like seeing these friends I met there and just like feeling like they would ask me how I was doing, and like I didn't even know how to express how I was doing because I just wanted to like bawl my eyes out or something, because I felt like my life was so crazy and that nobody understood it. I was just stuck at this place and I just felt so weird and I didn't even know how to express it. I just felt like I needed to get out. So fortunately, I mean, that place did do some things well. They did encourage us to like get involved in a church somewhere. It was a Christian organization and they did encourage us to get involved in a church and like have outside hobbies and things so that you didn't go crazy. So I did do that. Like I got involved in a church. I also found a dance class that I liked a lot. I don't remember what style it was. It was either hip hop, jazz, or tap, but it was one of those. And I was taking that once a week. So I did sort of find some other things, which is interesting because I had started going to this Bible study from this church for a couple weeks. That's how I met these girls. But then I found the dance class, and it happened to be on the same night as the Bible study. So actually, I started going to the dance class. And so it's kind of significant that I only went to that Bible study like 2 times. And I was mostly going to the dance class. But then I would see those girls like at church on every other week. So barely knew them, only went to 2 Bible studies with them ever, and only saw them at church every other week. And I was only even in California for a few months. So barely knew these girls. But I quit my job and I didn't know anyone. And I really wanted to stay in California and I didn't know what to do. I like had given my 2 weeks, but I had a feeling they were going to actually ask me to leave sooner, which they did end up doing. And because I kind of spoke up about some things that I didn't agree with at the place, and like they were not happy about that. Kind of created a little bit of a stirring and they were not happy about it. Anyways, so it was just like a weird experience. Like my first job out of college, I was not expecting to like disagree with the company and like speak up about it. Like it was just like, I was like, what is happening with my life? And I moved across the country for this and now I'm like quitting it. It was just really weird. So anyway, I quit my job. I was within the little period of time before I was like actually needed to be gone, and I was living there. So I had nowhere to live. I was going to have nowhere to live. And so I remember calling one of the girls from my Bible study, Stacy, and I called her on the phone. I was in like a parking lot to like some grocery store or something, and I called her on the phone. I remember walking into the store just talking to her on the phone. And I was just like, I quit my job. I don't know what to do. And I was just like crying. And I don't even know what I asked her for. I might have asked her like if she knew of anyone that was looking for a roommate or just to pray for me. I might have just asked her to pray for me or something like that. I just like didn't know what to do. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." Like, "Yes, of course." Da da da. So we get off the phone, and then like 10 minutes later, she calls me back and she's like, "Okay, so Tracy, my dad said you can live with us." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I was not expecting that actually. So she had a house in San Jose. Her dad had a house. He lived in Hawaii but was renting his house to her and her 2 friends, Candace and Bonnie. And the house only had 3 rooms, but they were living there for really cheap rent because her dad was giving it to them for, really cheap because it was his daughter and her friends. And yeah, he said I could live there for like, it was like $100 a month or $200 a month. It's like something really cheap. And basically, I was going to live in the back of the living room, which was like so crazy. But I was so grateful. So I, of course, took them up on that, went in to move with them pretty quickly. It was awesome. Like, we all became really good friends, actually. And I got a job within a week working as a clothing store manager at Tilly's, which also turned out to be a job that I was that job stressed me out, actually. So I was there for like 4 months, but during that time I got really involved with this church. Um my roommates all went to church, a certain church, and that's where I met them. But I was trying to get involved with the youth group there because I still was like, oh, I think I have a passion for working with youth. Like, that's what I want to do, even though I didn't love that organization. Like, I still want to work with like youth or teenagers. And so I wanted to do that through church. But that church, for some reason, it was really hard to be a volunteer with a youth group. I don't know why, but it was just like, I'm like, why don't they want tons of volunteers? Like, why is this so hard? And my friend who I lived with, who went to the church, was like, Tracy, why don't you go to this other church? They have a really good youth group too, and I think they really need help. And I have a bunch of friends that go there that you would probably like. So it's really interesting that all my roommates that went to one church were like, why don't you just go to this other church? And I was like, okay. So I checked out this other church, and actually it was awesome. I went to their like young adult group like for myself, and I met all these friends like so quickly. It was a really cool community there. South Hills Community Church, shout out. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was a really good church for me for a while. Anyways, they totally needed volunteers for the youth group, and so I was like really excited. They actually had something kind of, I think, kind of tragic happen in the youth group right before I got hired, or not hired, right before I started volunteering. And so they were kind of like, it wasn't going super well for the youth group. And I don't know, I felt something in my heart. Like, I want to help them. I want to like help through this transition they're going through and this like hard time the teenagers are going through. So did that, got involved there. There were a couple of really good, like, back to dance. Like, are we even talking about dance, or are we just talking about my life? I don't know, but it's confusing sometimes. But uh, there were a couple of seniors. I feel like they were the seniors in the high school youth group. It was like about 100 people in that youth group. And a couple of the seniors were like really good at dance, really into dance, took dance classes all the time, probably did dance competitions all the time. One of them actually went off to like Juilliard and is now like working with Hubbard Street, I think, in Chicago. So yeah, they were like really good dancers. I mean, they were seniors in high school, but they were really good. And I remember they were going to put on some little dance show for the youth group for something, maybe because they were graduating or something like that. And I was kind of friends with some of them, and they knew that I had taken like a tap class, or I was taking a little bit of tap or something. And so the one girl, Amanda, was like, Tracy, you should do a little tap number in our performance. Like, we'll all split to the side and we'll have a little tap board in the middle, and you're going to do a little tap dance, which I thought was so funny because, like, I was so beginner at tap, and these dancers were, like, really good. But they thought it would be so funny to have me, like, one of the youth volunteers, to, like, do my little tap dance. So, pretty sure I did that. So, that was my first little dance experience there. And then they graduated, and oh, what happened? Oh, okay. I might be saying this out of order. I put notes. I have notes down that I should probably be looking at so I don't like mess this whole story up, but I'm trying to just remember it now. So I did that, but I was getting involved in, I might be telling this a little bit out of order. I was getting involved in that church, and the Tilly's manager job was stressing me out. So I ended up quitting Tilly's after 4 months. I actually left on really good terms. My district manager like loved me. He still gave me like a Christmas bonus and was like, if you ever want to come back. So that was cool. But I just went back to Starbucks where I used to work. I just found this store in Willow Glen and was like, I used to work at Starbucks. Can I work here? I need these hours or whatever. And I remember the manager being like, well, maybe, I don't know if we can give that amount of hours or something. And I was like, okay, no problem. I'll just like go to a different store. And he was like, well, I remember him being like, well, okay, I guess we can do it. And they just like hired me like on the spot. And then I quit my job at Tilly's. And I wanted to work at Starbucks because I really wanted to get more involved in the church youth group. I think I sort of like wanted to work there eventually at the church. So I wanted a job that was more flexible. With Tilly's, I was probably working 60 hours a week because I was working all the time at the store, and then I was covering other stores, and it was just burning me out crazy. So I wanted to work somewhere where I could control the hours, where I could have flexible hours. I wanted to be able to go on trips with the teenagers and get more involved in the church. So that was my plan. Got hired at Starbucks. I was doing that. I was getting really involved in the church. And there was this internship position that I sort of wanted, but it wasn't like opening yet. Like the person who currently had it hadn't left yet. So I was kind of waiting on that. But meanwhile, like I'm loving my life. My rent is so cheap anyways. I actually ended up moving into Stacy's room because eventually I was like living in the living room is like not cool. I mean, it was cool. It was like I was very grateful for it, but I didn't really have like walls or anything. And actually the 3 girls I lived with, super great. Like I love them. We all became best friends, but like they all had serious boyfriends and I was the only single one. And they're also all very like strong Christians, like devout Christians. And so, they didn't want to have their boyfriends in their rooms very much. So they'd always be in the living room. They'd be like making out in the living room. And I'm like, this is my room. I remember my friend, I met this girl, Jacqueline, because I got my hair cut somewhere. And this girl who worked at the hair salon was from Chicago. She had like a super strong Chicago accent. Like I do sometimes if I stay in Chicago for a long time, it like comes back. But she was totally wild, that girl. We were like kind of totally different people, but she was also a Christian and she was from Chicago. And so we connected. Anyway, I remember her coming to visit or coming to pick me up from my house one time or something. And she came in and my roommates were there with their boyfriends, or one of them was like making out their boyfriend. And when we left the house to get in the car, she was like, Tracy, how do you live like that? How do you live around them like that? I'm like, I don't know. So a bunch of stuff happened, like where I almost moved out because I was like, I can't handle this living room situation anymore. But then, fortunately, Stacy, who had the master bedroom, was like, you can just move into my room. I don't know why we didn't think of this before. So she kind of rearranged her room so I could have my own bed on like one side of the room. So it was working out great. Still had cheap rent. Now I had like a room situation, but all of my roommates had serious boyfriends, and Stacy was the first one to get married, and it was her house, her dad's house. So I'm living life. I'm thinking life is great, but then Stacy gets married, which, I'm very happy for her and Robbie, but they were like not going to have the house anymore because she was going to move out, and I think her dad was going to sell it or something. Like it wasn't going to be there anymore. And I was like, oh shoot, now I have to get like a real job. So I didn't know what to do. I wanted to work at the church. The position wasn't opening. So I was trying to find just like a marketing job because I'm like, my degree's in marketing. I just need to find like a marketing job. But I was applying a bunch of places and just like nothing was opening. And I was like, this wasn't working out. And like people at the church that I was involved at were trying to give me ideas and like coming up with stuff, but nothing was like very stable or secure sounding. So I was just like, this isn't working. Like I'm just going to move. I need to move back to Chicago. I just need to move back with my mom and my stepdad. And so I made the decision to leave California after a year and just move all the way back home. And it was not like I'm going to move back home temporarily. It was like, okay, like I guess I'm just going to make my life in Chicago. I guess California isn't for me or whatever. So move back to the Chicago suburbs. My mom and my stepdad at that point had moved to Sugar Grove, which is like near Naperville, so not in Schaumburg anymore, if any of this means anything to you, but still the suburbs of Chicago. And I worked at a Starbucks close to their house that I found. I transferred, but I still wanted to like pursue my interest outside of Starbucks. I didn't want to work at Starbucks forever. So I ended up getting an internship, an unpaid internship with this theater company in the city in Chicago called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. Actually, they're called the Neo-Futurists or something, but the show they put on like every weekend was called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. TMLM, TBGB. Actually, we called it Too Much Light. That's what we called it, I think, Too Much Light. I went there all the time in high school because this guy I worked with at Starbucks in high school who was older than me, and I thought he was really cool. He told me about it and was like, I think you would like this show in Chicago. And so me and my friends used to go all the time. It was such a funny experience. It would probably take a whole podcast episode to describe that show. But basically, like, it was pretty cheap to go to. You would like roll a dice and that would be like how much you paid to get in. It was like they just had like these very strange like practices going to that show, and it was like very interactive with the audience, and they would write all these little skits. They called them plays. They were like 2-minute plays, and the audience would yell out. I'm like, should I go into this? Is like way too much detail. I'm not even talking about dance right now, but like anyway, it was a very fun show, very creative. I loved it. So I kind of looked into like if there were any jobs with that company, and I found this internship situation with one of the members, one of the Neo-Futurists. His name's Jay Torrance, and he wrote his own like full-length play that was going to be at the same like building that they have Too Much Light at. And it was called Roustabout. It's like a about a circus, and it was a little bit of a musical. There was some dancing and singing in it. Anyways, I applied for that internship. I mean, it was unpaid, but I know there were other people applying as well. And I lived really far away. I mean, it took me like an hour and a half in traffic to get there. But I was like, I'm going to make it happen because I want to have like an internship in something that I'm interested in. So I applied for it thinking they are not going to have me do this because they're going to be like, you live way too far away or whatever. But they didn't seem to care that I lived in the suburbs, and they did end up taking me on for this internship. I was basically like a script supervisor. I would kind of just like sit there watching the script, making notes, and I would just be at the rehearsals all the time. I honestly felt like I didn't do much except I just kept being at the rehearsals. So I was just watching them, which I love watching rehearsals. I always think that's fun. So I enjoyed it. But I watched them so much that I knew the show pretty well. And there was one night that one of the actors was gone, couldn't make it to rehearsal, and there was this like dance number with 4 of them, but the one was missing. And so they were like, Tracy, do you want to get up there and like just do that part for now so we have like the 4 people? I was like, sure. And they thought like I was just gonna like stand in, but I kind of knew the dance because I'd watched it so many times, and it wasn't like it was like super intricate or anything. And I just kind of did it with them and like acted the part and did the dance. And I remember them like kind of cheering me on about it. And one of the guys with the company who was like watching the rehearsal that night was like, Tracy, you did so good. I wouldn't even know that you weren't like an actor and a dancer. It seemed like you should just be there. You should just be in it. And I was like, oh, like, I don't know, these little comments like that just like encouraged me because I think that was really what was in my heart. But I didn't really think I was good enough or that I could ever do it. So I just kept like doing these other things within it, like, oh, I'm going to do admin work, I'm going to watch the scripts, whatever. After that show ended, which was a cool experience, after that show ended, I was still in Chicago area. I was still working at Starbucks. I ended up getting another internship with a tap dancing company in Chicago called Chicago Human Rhythm Project. This guy, Lane Alexander, he's a really good tap dancer and like artistic director in Chicago. He ran that company, and he had a small tap dancing company called BAM. And I do think I took a couple tap classes with Lane, maybe like beginner tap classes. I don't think I could afford it or it didn't really work in my schedule, so I wasn't doing it regularly, but I took a couple. But I ended up getting a paid internship working for that organization. I mean, it was very minimally paid, but it was something. And I was basically I ended up being in charge of like this man, I need a drink of water. It is hard to talk this much. Oh my gosh, I'm dying. It's getting like hot in here. Anyways, so I was an intern for the tap dancing company, and I ended up being in charge of like the tap dancing company would perform at different schools, like different grade schools and stuff. And I think I was sort of in charge of like organizing that. And then sometimes I would go to the schools with them. And it was cool because I got to watch all their shows, and like they were so good. And it was like really fun to watch. And I remember one of the guys one time when I was at the school with them, he was like, Tracy, when are you going to be up here with us? Like on stage. And I just like was like, ha ha ha. And I just smiled because in my heart, I was just like, I do want to be up there on stage with you. But like, I don't know, all of that felt like unattainable or whatever. But through these experiences, like being around performers, like in the theater company and in the tap dancing company, a lot of them had outside jobs, but then did like this artistic, like performance stuff on the side. And I just thought that was really cool. I was like, I want just like a regular job and then to do acting on the side or do all this artistic stuff on the side. I was like, that sounds amazing. That's what I want to do too. So it kind of started developing this idea of that type of life to me. And I thought that sounded really cool. So yeah, I was applying for other jobs because like, you know, I didn't want to live with my parents forever, and I was trying to get like a better paying job. So I had applied for this marketing job when I first moved back to Chicago. Someone at Starbucks actually gave me a lead to that job, and I had applied for it like 6 months earlier, but like never heard back. Well, they ended up calling me. It was like a marketing firm closer to the city of Chicago, and yeah, I had an interview with them. Went pretty well. Actually, they looked at my resume and they were like, you seem great, but like we feel like you would get bored here. Like, because it was just like a job in a cubicle. I don't even think you were doing creative marketing stuff. It was just some sort of like entry level position, 9 to 5 or whatever. They're like, we feel like you might get bored here. And I remember saying to them, no, I want a boring job. I want a boring job so that I can do like acting on the side, which I'm like, I can't believe I told them like I want a boring job. But I totally know I said that, which I guess was okay to them because it still seemed like they were going to hire me. So I'm counting on probably getting this job soon. I'm like, okay, I'll like move closer to the city, kind of have this plan in my head about it. But I'm still working at the tap dancing company and Starbucks. And during that time, I get an email. I was actually at work at the tap dancing company, and I get an email from the youth pastor at the church in San Jose that I used to volunteer at. And he sends me an email. He's like, hey, Tracy, how's it going? And he's like, just so you know, we have a new position open here. Like, we just created it. And it's like a more full-time position. It was 30 hours a week instead of 20 hours a week. And it, like the internship that I had wanted at the church was like a 20-hour-a-week internship. And I was just going to do it with Starbucks or something. But he was like, we now have a new position with the youth group. It's 30 hours a week. It includes benefits. Like, I'd probably still have to have like another job to make up for like the 10 hours. That's not a full-time job, but he's like, I think you would be great for it. I don't know if you would consider moving back to California. He also said there's like 8 other people applying for the job and they all have degrees in theology and you're the only one that doesn't. But I would totally like push for you to get the position. He's like, I don't have the final word. The final word is like the main pastor, but I will totally try to get you the job if you like really want it. And I was like, oh my gosh. I kind of like laughed about that. I'm like, I'm not moving back to California. It's like expensive and it's a whole lot of work, like moving across the country. And I'm like, no, I like made the decision to move back to Chicago. Like, I'm not moving back to California. Like, that's crazy. But I remember like forwarding the email to my mom at home that day just to be like, look at this email I got from Ryan or whatever. And I came home from work that day and my mom opened the door for me and she had tears in her eyes and she was like, I'm like, why are you crying? She's like, because I know that you want to take that job in California. I know you want to move back to California. And I was thinking, I really didn't know that I was not thinking I was going to move back to California. But when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, like, should I move back to California? Like, maybe I do really want that job. So I was thinking about it, talking to Ryan, the youth pastor, about the pay, which was less than what I wanted. And I was like, oh, how is this even going to work if I wanted this job? Meanwhile, I get a call from the marketing firm in Chicago, and I didn't even pick it up because I was like, oh no. And they left me a voicemail, and they're like, basically they're offering me the job. And I was like, oh no. And I still like didn't know. I think I had applied for the youth group job, but I didn't know if I was getting it. And there's all these other applicants, and I didn't know. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I have to decide about this marketing job. But I don't even know if I have this other job. And that was one of the first times I took a risk in my life. But basically, I like prayed about it, thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the risk. So I called the marketing company, turned down the job, and was like, oh God, I hope I get this other job. Fortunately, I did get the church job. I moved all the way back to San Jose, California again after a year. I think I had a different friend. I always had different friends like driving back and forth with me across the country to help me get there because I never wanted to drive by myself across the whole country. But yeah, so then I was back in San Jose. It was like really, really fun to go back there. It was like my people. I really miss them. Like being in Illinois, it was just like, I remember feeling kind of sad, like just missing my friends in California and like missing California. I mean, it was fine. Like I wasn't like not happy, but I did like kind of have this like feeling in my heart of just like missing them. And so it was just cool to come back, and they were all so excited to have me back. And the girls that were in my little church small group that I led, the teenage girls, they all greeted me with a bag of marshmallows because we used to make marshmallows from scratch, which is like a whole nother story. There's so many more details I can give that like will probably go in my book. But anyways, so I'm back. Now I'm working at the youth group. Now it's my job. I actually think that maybe that was when I did the little tap dancing number with the seniors. That's what I was getting out of order. I'm like, there's so much back and forth in my life. I'm like, which time was I in California? Okay, so anyway, now I'm working at the youth group. I was taking a little bit of dance for a little while, and I did do the little tap number with the seniors that were good at dance. And then I think this is the next thing I wanted to talk about. So this is just a kind of a random story, but couple years before that, I think it was a couple years before that, I had heard Rihanna's song Unfaithful by Rihanna on the radio. And for some reason, every time that song came on, I really liked it. And every time it came on, so that song, you probably know it, but it's basically about like a girl who's, I don't really know what it's totally about, but what it seems like it's about a girl who's like cheating on her husband, but she doesn't like want to be, but she like is. And it's like her struggle with that. And every time that song came on the radio, I just kept picturing this like choreography in my head, which is weird because, like, again, I wasn't like a dancer and I definitely wasn't a choreographer, except I took that one choreography class in high school. But for some reason, when that song came on, I would see choreography in my head and I just couldn't get it out of my head. And I was just like, I want to choreograph something to this song where it's like about God, where it's about like our lack of faithfulness to God. Like, God is always faithful, but sometimes we're unfaithful to Him, or like we go astray, but we don't really want to go astray, but we do sometimes, anyways. And I wanted to create like a piece, a dance piece to that. And so I had that in my heart for 2 years. Like, it wasn't like I was thinking about it all the time, but like whenever the song came on, I would think about it again. And I'd just be like, oh, I just can't get that out of my head. Like, I feel like I got to do that at some point, but I didn't know where I would do that or anything. And I sort of forgot about it mostly. But then when I was back working in the youth group, and there were so many talented kids there, I don't know if that's why I thought of it, but I was just like, oh, I would love to like choreograph. I think I was doing this sermon series, so I had to preach sermons at the youth group, which that was my favorite part of the youth group. I think was like coming up with sermons and like speaking, even though it would make me nervous every time, but like I really liked it. And we did a series on God's love or something like that, and I was like, ooh, I really want to do that choreography to Unfaithful by Rihanna. And I remember telling my friend about it, who was the children's pastor at the church, and she was sort of like a non-conventional person, like she's not like a crazy rule follower. And I remember being like, do you think I can get away with doing this? Like, do you think the church would let me choreograph a song to like a worldly song for church? And I remember her being like, just go for it, Tracy, just do it. I don't even think I asked anyone. I was just like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then it just so happened that there was this girl in college who used to be in the youth group who had went away to college or something, and she was back for the summer, or she was back for some reason back in town, and she wanted to help with the youth group. And she and I kind of knew each other, I guess, from when she was in high school or something. And she was a really good dancer. And I remember her asking me, like, Tracy, I want to start a dance team with the youth group. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's perfect, because I really want to choreograph this dance to Unfaithful by Rihanna. And she thought that idea was like amazing. And so basically, I had this whole idea for the choreography. I mean, I wanted it to be like a real dance, but I also like had this like vision for the story of it. And I wanted like there to be this like group of like church people who were like worshiping God, always worshiping God. But then one of the church people kind of goes astray and starts doing other things, like not pleasing to God or whatever. And they're struggling with that, and they're going back and forth with like the church and like their own way or whatever. But it wasn't just about that person falling away. It was also about the people in the church who weren't caring about that person. They were just like in their own world worshiping God. So they looked good, but like they weren't caring about the person that was like struggling. They weren't noticing them or seeing what they were going through. And so I wanted it to kind of be about that too, like how we need to be more caring for other people and not just like be in our own world. And so that's what I wanted to kind of show in the dance. And so I picked, I think we asked who wanted to be involved, but basically it was these kids who like did a lot of dance, or some of them had more dance experience than others, but they all liked dance or whatever. And there was one girl that was a really good dancer. I knew she took 1,000,000 dance classes a week, and she was very good. And I asked her, like, do you want to be the main girl? Because I want to have this part in the middle. I made up most of the choreography for the group, which I don't even, literally remember making it up in my room, like, I remember I was like rolling on the floor. I mean, I put all this different stuff in it, and I don't even know where I came up with those moves. Again, like, it's kind of almost freeing when you don't have as much dance training, because you're just like, I can do anything. I don't know. So I made up most of the choreography for that, but I wanted like this girl who was really good at dance to do this like ballet piece kind of in the middle where she was kind of on her own for a bit. And I had artistic direction for it. Like I knew what I wanted it to be about, but like I didn't know ballet or ballet moves. I wanted her to come up with the choreography herself. So I had asked this girl to do that part, if she wanted to do that part. And I remember she was like kind of nervous about it. She wanted to be in the dance, but she didn't know if she wanted that part and to do all of that. So she ended up saying no, that she didn't want to do that part. So she got just one of the regular parts. And this other girl who was also a really good dancer that I didn't know as well, but she was also in the youth group, and I guess she also took lots of dance. She was like, I'll do it. I want to do it or whatever. And I was like, okay. And that was such a cool experience. Like, she put together this like beautiful ballet piece for the middle of that song, and I remember like watching. It was so cool because I got to like rehearse with her, and even though I didn't understand all the ballet moves, I got to kind of direct her on the expression of it and like how to do the moves differently, not differently, but like how to put the right expression in it so that it like conveyed the story that I was trying to convey. It was so cool. Like, I absolutely loved doing that. And what was crazy, and then the girl who initially like I had asked initially to do that part, once she saw the other girl doing it and we were in the rehearsals, I remember her like saying she wished she would have taken that part or asking me if she could still have it. And I was like, it's too late, girl. It's too late, you know. Fortunately, she still stayed in the dance and didn't like leave or anything, but it just made me think too like about like when you get an opportunity to do something, like take it, you know? I mean, unless you really don't want it, but like if you think you want it but you're just kind of scared, like you should take it. I needed to say that to myself because yeah, she was like disappointed that she didn't get to do it, but I was like, girl, I asked you first, you know? But anyway, she was great too in her part, and it was so cool because my job got really busy at the church. Like, man, it's like every job I take gets so crazy busy. I mean, I guess that's just how everything works in the world with jobs. But I got so busy with my job and I didn't really have time to keep working on the dance. And so, fortunately, Jody, who was the girl that was running the dance team and had all the dance experience, she kind of took it over. And there were still little parts of it that I hadn't choreographed yet. So, she ended up finishing the choreography, finishing the rehearsals with them because I was just busy with all this work that honestly I didn't even really want to do that bad, like admin work and stuff. But I had to do it because I was paid to work there, whereas she was just like a volunteer. So it was cool that she took it over because then I remember when they kind of finished it, she was like, she came to my office and was like, Tracy, do you want to see it? Like, we have the whole thing now. I was like, yeah, I want to see it. So I came and we were in the sanctuary, like nobody was in there. It was like a weekday or something, but we were in the sanctuary and they just performed it in front of me, and oh my gosh, it was just like, I think it like made me get teary because I was like, oh, this is so good, and like it's so cool that it was just like an idea in my head that I feel like actually I feel like God gave me that idea. But I wasn't even able to completely carry it out. But then this girl came along who had the experience of dance, and many people who had dance experience, and they made it like even better, and I got to watch the finished product and it was so cool. And I remember when they performed it at the youth group, tons of people came that night, a bunch of parents came that night to like watch it. And I remember saying to them, which was kind of intense of me, but I was like, I don't want anyone to clap at the end of this. I don't want it to be about like the performance. I want it to be about like what God is speaking to your heart while this is happening. And we are grateful for the dancers. They did a great job, but we're just not going to clap at the end because I just want you to think about like what just happened and what God might be speaking to you. So it was really cool. Just like a really cool mood was set because they really respected that, even though high schoolers are crazy. So I was really impressed that they like respected that and like listened to what I said. But so they did the whole piece, and I remember one of my friends at the church who was like closer to my age, she was there that night too, and she was watching it and she really liked it. But I didn't know until later on, like months later, she had told me that she was going through something, kind of something hard in her life, and it was personal, and she hadn't shared it with me yet at that point. And she said when she watched the dance, it just like really like hit her, like with all the stuff she was going through, and it really like made a difference for her. And that was just like really cool to hear because I was just thinking like you never know if God gives you an idea or you have an idea in your heart, whether you know if it's from God or whoever, whatever, just an idea you have. And you never know how if you don't do that idea, like maybe somebody is going to miss out from being blessed by that, you know? And also like the timing of your ideas. Like I had the idea 2 years earlier, but for some reason a way to produce it didn't open up till that time. But that time was a time that like was perfect for a number of people. And so it was really cool. I wish we had it recorded. We have my sermon recorded. I have that somewhere. And then we have like it recorded where I'm telling everyone like to pay attention to the dance and not make jokes about it and just really listen and like not clap at the end. We have all that. And we have the song. Like you can hear the song playing, but it's all just audio. I'm like, because we used to record all the sermons on audio for like the podcast, but we didn't video record things. I'm like, why didn't anybody video this? If anyone did video this out there, I would love to see it. I'd probably see it and be like, oh, this isn't even that good. But I really thought it was good back then. So anyway, that was a really cool like dance experience that I had with the youth group. And after that, the church like started talking about promoting me to be like the youth director because we lost a couple of youth pastors during that time. They were just transitioning to like different jobs and stuff. We had an interim one and then he left to go back to school, and so they needed someone and they were talking to me about being the youth director. But I was like, I haven't even gone to seminary. Like, I went to a Christian college, but I didn't really study the Bible, you know? And so I was considering taking that position, but I was like, I want to go back to school though, then. Like, I want to go to seminary if I'm going to do this. So they were like, yeah, well, you should do that then. And they couldn't give me any money towards it because they just didn't have money to give me. But they said I could fundraise if I wanted to and talk to people in the church about like, donating money to me to go back to school. So I did that. I wrote these letters to fundraise, and basically people paid for me to start going to seminary. I went to Fuller, which the actual Fuller Theological Seminary is in Pasadena, which is where I live now. But I was in San Jose, and they have a branch up there in Menlo Park. So I was starting to go to classes there. But my schedule was really crazy with the youth group. So I could only take certain classes that would fit in my schedule. And one of the classes that fit in my schedule was to do this class called Theology in Film. And it was a class at the Sundance Film Festival in Park City, Utah. And I was like, that is crazy. Like, I would absolutely love to do that class. But I felt bad because I'm like, people are like giving me money to go to school. I can't like just use their money to just go to the Sundance Film Festival. That feels like I'm like cheating people or I'm like doing something sneaky. But it really was a class that fit in my schedule. And I remember the advisor that I was talking to there was like, saw me just like light up about that class, and she was like, you know, it's really hard for like new students to get in that class. It's a class like everybody wants to take. She's like, but you're so passionate, like I'll try to get you in if you want to take that class. And so I was like, yes, I want to take that class. And so I ended up going to the class at Sundance. It was amazing. I am totally going to put a bunch of details about that in the book I write because there was so many crazy things that happened, but I don't want to get into all of it right now. But basically, I have to mention that because that's how I ended up moving to LA. Because basically, I took that class, went to Sundance for 10 days, ended up having this conversation with a director there who just like, it just changed my life. I really think it was God that changed my life, but I think he kind of spoke to me through this director. And it just kind of empowered me that, like, if I wanted to pursue acting, I could, or I could do like anything if I wanted to. Like, if there's something in my heart, I can go after it. I don't have to just sit back, like, oh, I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. So after that experience, I started to like think about quitting my job at the church. Like, they were going to promote me, and now I'm thinking about quitting. And all these people gave me money to go to school, so that was like weird. I took one more class at that school, like a regular class where we just like went to actual class. Oh my gosh, it was so hard. I was just like in my room writing papers all the time, just like having to read like 1,000 books. And I was like, this just can't be what I'm supposed to be doing. So I don't know. I was like praying about it and still hadn't decided about taking the promotion. And eventually I was like, you know what? I don't want to take the promotion. I don't want to work here anymore. Like, I want to pursue acting. And so I had to have this whole meeting with all these parents that were giving me money, and I felt so bad about it. But I was like, I can't. This degree is going to take me 5 years, and I already hate it. So, yeah, I had this meeting with the parents, told them I'm changing my mind. I'm going to pursue acting. I couldn't believe all the parents, except for one who had some questions for me, which is understanding. But most of them were just like, wow, this is so exciting. Like, this one parent was like, I always wanted to be a painter, but like I never did it. I don't know, they were like inspired by me or something. And I was about 25 at this point, 25 or 26. And yeah, so basically I quit my job at the church. I gave like a 2-month notice to try to really help them out as much as I could. And fortunately, this guy came in who helped a lot to kind of take over as I was leaving. And he did a great job, which made me think, yeah, he's much more suited for this job than me. Like, this job kind of stresses me out. Like, there's certain parts of it I like, but I don't like a lot of this stuff that I have to do with the admin stuff and everything. So I still kept volunteering at the church. I still kept going to the church, but it just wasn't like my job anymore. I became a substitute teacher in San Jose, and I did that to have flexibility with acting. So I did a bunch of student films and short films in like San Francisco and San Jose, and then I moved to LA after like a year of that. So there's a lot more story to go with that, but I'll probably tell that in my book. So anyway, I moved to LA, and this is kind of where we're gonna sort of wrap up this episode. But I moved to LA, and I moved there for acting. So I was doing extras work. I tried to be a substitute teacher in LA, but actually it was 2009, I think, and like a bunch of teachers got laid off that year, and so they were only accepting like actual teachers to be subs. They weren't accepting anybody else, so I couldn't do that. I was like, oh shoot. So I was doing extras work. I was looking for other kinds of work. So this is where the dance comes back again. So I was there for acting, not for dance, but I was looking for work, and I saw that Six Flags Magic Mountain. Is that what it's called? I'm from Chicago, so we have Six Flags Great America, which like we just call it Great America. We don't call it Six Flags. But anyways, out here they call it Six Flags, and I think it's also called Magic Mountain. I get confused. I don't like scary roller coasters, so I don't go to places like that a lot. I go to Disneyland, but not Six Flags. Anyways, Six Flags, I believe, was having auditions around Halloween time. They were having auditions for Thriller, to be a dancer for Thriller. And I was like, a dancer? I can dance. Here we go again with me thinking that I'm like this great dancer just because like I have these very small experiences with dance in my life. And I'm over here like in LA where there's like tons of professional dancers, which I'm not very aware of all of this. I'm just like, oh, I can dance. I should go to that audition. Maybe I'll get that. That would be really cool to be like paid to be a dancer, even though that's not even why I moved here. So I show up at that audition, which is so funny because it's Thriller. Like, people know the Thriller dance, too. Like, not only are there a million better dancers than me in general in LA, but also, like, people know this dance already. And I don't even know if I watched the music video of that before I auditioned for that. So I showed up, did not know the dance at all. I might have watched something to get, like, an idea. But, like, yeah, I was a mess. They taught that choreography so fast, and I had no idea what was going on, and I was in the back just like a wreck. Like, I didn't get any of it. It was terrible. But I just kind of thought it was funny. Like, I didn't move here to do dance anyways. It wasn't like it was like severely affecting me. I was just like, okay, that was a funny experience. And I remember like leaving that night, and then I got an email or something from them later being like, yeah, you didn't make it to be a dancer, but we want you to be a ghost. And I was like, I do not want to be a ghost. Like, even though I did go to LA for acting, so I guess that would be more in the acting realm, but like, I'm not even the biggest Halloween person, and I'm not about to drive like super far because it was like far away to get to Six Flags. I'm not gonna drive super far for this minimum wage job scaring little kids or something. Like, so no, I did not take the ghost job. And then my other dance experience I want to share before we end this episode is I also auditioned for this like union theater production of Annie. It's somewhere in like the South Bay or Anaheim or something like that. And it was a union production, which I don't know a lot about the theater union as much as I do about like SAG and stuff. But like I had to wait there like all day to try to get into this. Like, they had a singing audition for it, and then they had a movement audition. They called it a movement audition. And because I wasn't in the union, I think I had to just go in these like regular groups of like non-union people, and we had to wait like the longest, like be there all day to hopefully get in. Because you could get in union production being non-union. That's how you build like your union hours or something like that. I used to know more about this. But yeah, so I waited all day. We were outside. It was like tiring and hot to wait all day, and I was waiting to go in to do the singing part of the audition. And I did start taking voice lessons because I was trying to be able to sing as well, just to be like more marketable or whatever. And yeah, we were in the last group. They basically said, okay, they pointed at my group of people, and they're like, you guys are going to be the last group that we take. And I was like, okay, at least I made it in. And then after the group before us went, they came back out and said, actually, we're done. I was like, oh my gosh, I waited all day for this. And I've always wanted to be an Annie. But if I'm being real, I always wanted to be like an orphan in Annie, not like one of the like maids at the house, but which is probably what I would have been. But anyways, so Didn't get to do the singing audition, but they were like, you can still stay and like do the movement audition later. You can come back and do the movement audition if you want. And I was kind of like, oh, I guess I'll do that, but like, can you really make it if you didn't do the singing audition at all? So I don't know. I was like, well, I'm already here. I have all my stuff with me. Like, I'm just going to go to the movement audition. So I went and got food or something, came back, was there for the movement audition. And again, I'm thinking I can dance. Like, why am I thinking that when I literally went to that Thriller audition and couldn't do anything? But for some reason, I still thought like, oh, they just knew that dance already or something. And like, but I think because it was called a movement audition, I was like, oh, movement. That's not even like real dancing. Like, I can do that. It's for like musical theater. I'm good at that because I did that in high school or whatever. So I'm outside with all of these dancers, and oh my gosh, almost every single dancer, and there was tons of people there, start pulling out like 7 different kinds of shoes from their bags. And I'm like, what is happening? Like, I think I just brought like, was just wearing my sneakers. I might have brought jazz shoes because I think I had jazz shoes, but like, I couldn't believe like all the different types of shoes. I didn't even know like what they were. I'm like, what are all these shoes everybody has? And everybody looked so professional, and I was just I was bewildered. And this girl sitting next to me, thank God, she also didn't know what was going on. She also was like, whoa, why does everybody have all this stuff? So she and I became friends because we were like the only 2 people that didn't know a clue about like what was going on. And then, so I'm getting like nervous, but at least we're like chatting and laughing about it or whatever. Then we go in the room, we have our numbers. We're in this room with like so many people. I mean, there's like 80 people in that room. And they're like, it's pretty basic choreography. It's like really simple. So blah, blah, blah. I remember them saying that. And like, they just start rattling off like dance terms. And I can barely see. I'm like in the back. I can't see the person. I don't know all these terms that they're saying. And everybody just starts doing it. They just all start doing it. And I'm just like, what is happening? Like, I don't know any of this. How do you do this? And I was just like, oh my gosh, I should not even be here. Like, I didn't even get to do the singing audition. There's no way I would make it for this anyways. I don't want to be here and just like embarrass myself as they're like cutting people and like, oh my gosh. So I just like really knew like I do not belong here and I should not be here. So I remember like at some point, and this is not really like me, but at some point I was like, I need to sneak out of this place. And so I didn't even know what happened to my friend. I don't know if she snuck out as well, but like I just bulldozed to the door and like got out of there. But what's so funny is even though I did that and I had that experience, when I got back to my car, I was like, I wasn't like, wow, never doing that again. I was like, wow, I need to start taking dance classes. I just realized it was like I had finally had a moment of like, wow, I need to grow in my dance ability if I want to be able to like dance in for theater or for anything, you know? And so it kind of like woke me up to like the intense like professional dance situation that is LA, and that I needed to take dance classes. And that again, I'm going to talk about that in my next episode, but it wasn't like that happened and then all of a sudden I started taking a million dance classes. There's still a journey till how I got to that point. But that was like my first point of realizing that I need to take dance classes. So I wanted to share that. Thank you for listening. This was a long one. Wow, 57 minutes. Okay. If you listen to the whole thing, thank you. You are now my friend. You probably already were my friend. And yeah. So I got to get ready for Jazz Funk, and I don't have to get ready for it. I'm just going to get out of my car. But anyways, thanks for listening. I'm just rambling now. I'm going to say bye, and I will let you know when the 3rd episode is ready.